Utah Indigenous of Descheenie, tradition, not Indigenous of tradition, we are on Descheenie. My dad is the net, originally from Chile, Appalachian. He is white Descheenie, which means coyote, past people clan, and he is born for Descheenie, which means towering house clan. My dad, Eric Descheenie, is a former member of Arizona House of Representatives, Legislature, District 7. His district spanned across most of northeast Arizona and included 9 of the 22 tribes of Arizona. The diversity of his district stretched from the bottom of the Grand Canyon, the home of the Passamaquoddy people, to the corner of Winslow, Arizona, to the top of the beautiful White Mountains, the home of the White Mountain Apache people. My dad played a lead role in the creation of Bears Ears National Monument, a $1.35 million eight-year monument protecting aboriginal lands to several tribes, including my own. As a founding co-chair, facilitated the coalition's efforts in developing the formal proposal to President Obama. As many of you know, the monument was signed into law December 28, 2016. My dad has worked in equal opportunities, affordable housing, tribal administration, county government administration, and Indigenous people's rights advocacy. He used to be an active trail runner, having completed several marathons and ultramarathons, but now he's out of shape. His stories. He's a fan of Phoenix George and reading landscape photography. My dad means to me as a hard-working man and a dad who loves his 3 cents. And the other 2 of my brothers are only in the college.
All right. Is this thing queued up?
Yes.
I think it is, right? Wonderful. I'm so glad I'm not doing this. I'm not a technology guy by any means. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for those kind, beautiful words as illustrated by all of the folks that put this on. I think having my son, Sequoia, come up and speak behind all of that kind of illustrates why we're here, right? Our future. And when it was presented the opportunity for my son to join me, we flew from Arizona this morning. And, it's one of those things where you sit there and say, why do we do what we do? Really, like, seriously, why do we do what we do? Some of us, we do it for a paycheck, and that's certainly part of the ongoing challenge, is to make ends meet and to provide for our families. But the larger scope, right? Why do we do what we do? And to have my son join us is fitting in a variety of ways. Specifically, these are his Aboriginal lands. He spoke about Aboriginal lands back in my area of the country, rather our area of the country. But for him to be able to speak on these lands, I think it was certainly an honor for him and his family. That said, we have to ask ourselves, whose lands are we really on in historical context? And I hope I'm saying this correctly, but the PIELC people were the folks who are of these lands that we are standing on now. And of course, a lot of those folks are enrolled with the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, who, as many of you know, are here, as well as west of here, as a coastal tribe. My son is enrolled with the Siletz tribe, as well as his brothers. And currently, we reside in Flagstaff, Arizona. And it's funny, I saw this snow coming out here, and I thought to myself, didn't we just come from this like a week ago? I don't know if you have been watching the headlines, but I think we called it snowpocalypse. A week ago Friday, we were blessed. I was going to say endured. We were blessed with 35.9 inches of snow in a 24-hour period. And that set a new record. The same storm, I understand, dropped snow, brand new, unprecedented, in certain parts of Maui. And then, of course, we saw Los Angeles get snow to those folks' dismay, which is, of course, an extreme rarity. But all of this raises eyebrows, right? Extreme possibilities of weather patterns. And what does that mean for us on a go-forward basis? So it was a blessing to see all this snow here, but then I thought to myself, gosh, it's like spring is right around the corner, and certainly looking forward to that. Clanship that my son spoke of is just so important. And I should probably introduce myself again. Not so much for yourself, and certainly not to reiterate what my son had to say, but there are other folks listening right now. Space, place, geography sometimes don't necessarily compute the way we think so, at least from a conventional modernity standpoint. So I'd be remiss if I don't speak outward so that the environment and so our other than human relatives hear me, the cosmos, if you will. Certainly my ancestors are with us to this day, and of course my people back home in the Four Corners area, which of course we refer to as the Netza, Navajo. Mai Descheenie Mishle, Kia Ani Bashichin, Pitzani Bashiche, Anafan Deshinele, Chitned and Misha, Cheya Eric Descheenie Mishle. Briefly, as my son had indicated, you mentioned my first two clans, but the third clan is an interesting one because it goes to Descheenie, which is the Fulton Arms people clan. If any of you have heard of Chief Manuelito, he's one of our more famous leaders. He's one of the signatories to the treaty for Navajo people that we signed in the late 1800s. He was my relative. He is essentially my grandfather by virtue of friendship. And so it's important that we speak outward very specifically to identification. Because the one thing I'll get into a little bit later in my talk is that when you speak about Indigenous peoples, you can't talk about them in a just way without recognizing the land in which they come from. In other words, our identity is inextricably tied to a particular body of land. In some cases, for Indigenous peoples, a particular body of water. And so it's imperative that I introduce myself accordingly. Before any further, I really want to thank you all for inviting me. It's such an honor to speak on behalf of the things that I'm talking about, the people that stand with me. And they're just not Navajo people. They're Hopi people. They're Ute people. They're Zuni people. There are many pueblos in the state of New Mexico, present-day New Mexico, who relate to these same ancestral lands that I'm going to get into. And so it's just not me. And it's just not these particular tribes. There are others as well who claim ancestral ties to this particular body of land that I'm getting into. And with that, of course, comes a lot of responsibility. And of course, with that responsibility it's a great honor. So I don't take my speech today lightly. And I'm just so grateful for for you all to invite me and of course be present, listening today. I wrote my speech, and I was moved by the comments made earlier, speaking from the heart. And I certainly wrote my speech from the heart. However, I want to weave in and out of it because there's something to be said about living in the present moment, right? A lot of these thoughts and words came to me prior to today, and I think it would be disingenuous for me not to honor all of you here today. The energy you emit, the thoughts that you have, you personally. Speaking from the heart is something that I think is deserving for you as a person representing your family, and of course the path that you've taken to here, the one that you're going to carry on after tonight. And so living in the present is especially important in honoring your being. So I'm going to weave in and out of this, so bear with me. But before we go any further, if you're not familiar with the Bears Ears National Monument, and more specifically the Twin Buttes, what's portrayed up here, or illustrated in these pictures, are the Twin Buttes of Bears Ears. Very specific to Aboriginal stories, creation stories rather, to the different peoples who claim these lands. Specifically for the Net people, right around this time is when we tell these stories in the winter time. Outside of the winter period of time, stories as to how these Twin Buttes actually came to be are not spoken, and there are very specific reasons for that. But just briefly though, this is what you're presently looking at. Common ground. I looked at this theme, I thought to myself, common ground. Typically, tribes are always collapsed into the larger American narrative. And as a politician, and as well as an Indigenous rights advocate, I'm always like that. I just thought, common ground, really? But I was reminded of what happened with the Bears Ears National Monument. Common ground is the platform for which hope is conceived, simply because we as intelligent individuals can synthesize purpose that's mutually beneficial to ourselves, loved ones, community, and peoples. It was a critical aspect to the success of the Bears Ears Intertribal Coalition that originally featured the Navajo Nation and Hopi tribe co-chairing a major movement over the future of shared ancestral lands. If you're not familiar with how these two tribes, Navajo Nation and the Hopi tribe, usually behave with respect to land, we usually find ourselves at each other's necks. Typically in the courtroom. Setting aside our historical differences and finding common ground proved to reveal great possibilities. It's important to understand, though, that doing so is a conscious choice. Having evaluated very carefully what this would mean for our people respectively, including close analysis of where our difference ended and specifically where our commonalities began. And for these reasons, I will speak to great differences in ways of knowing and how those differences generate new ways of relating to land and managing those lands. Quote, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Who in the audience knows who said that? I raised the hands. I'm sorry?
Einstein?
Absolutely. Albert Einstein. Of course, it's safe to say that most or all of you know who Albert Einstein is. The next quote, see if any of you know who stated this. If you don't have anything to say, then don't say anything at all. Your mom. Absolutely. Well, this is about kinship, so there you go. No, you know, what was interesting is that there's a gentleman that I befriended a long time ago. Before that, he was an interesting character. His name is Kenneth Morrison. And, you know, he was a person who, I'll get more into who he was, but, you know, it's interesting to hear it mom because, and it's very important because he was very much into what it meant to be king. In fact, one of the books he authored was titled The Solidarity of King. And, but, you know, he always had this point of writing papers where he would say assertions without evidence, or rather, how do you know? And it was tough in his coursework because he would always say that there was so much written about people in general, but particularly Native American people, that didn't say anything. And he used to always say, if you don't have anything to say, then don't say anything at all. Ken was a religious studies professor at Arizona State University who I was fortunate enough to know. He stood firmly on the notion that it was imperative that when we write about Native American people, or anyone else for that matter, we represent them in their own terms. And we do that in part not by descriptively writing about them, rather by demonstrating what is actually transpiring from their perspective. He would say with respect to writing about Indigenous peoples, show me, don't tell me. These two quotes, one by Albert Einstein and the other Kenneth Morrison, they very much haunt me. And they haunt me leading up to this night. Largely because the subject matter I'm going to engage with you is very complex and potentially transformative. For me, it was. I don't proclaim to be an expert on the subject matter. However, I do claim to be an expert on where I've been, what I've done, and where I intend to go, which has all greatly benefited from this course of study. The course of study offered by Ken. In short, what I've done on Mother Earth is my demonstration, and is just a fraction of it. If just a fraction of it can benefit you, I would be full of joy. It was May of 2015, and I had just taken post in the Navajo Nation Office of the President and Vice President. A month later, I was asked to evaluate the ongoing efforts by then, an informal coalition building effort by grassroots leaders, including representatives of the Ute people, Hopi people, Zuni people, and Navajo people. At the time, I was still establishing my footing in the new administration, and wasn't sure of how much time I would be able to commit. But there was something peculiar about this effort. To me, it was the first time traditional knowledge would be the driving force in shaping a governmental initiative, especially at such a large scale. The proposition, as it was told to me, would go straight to the President of the United States. And of course, that's what got me excited. Not so much the large-scale presidential talk, but the traditional knowledge aspect. I was completely in when I noticed that. We agreed to formalize the effort, establish co-chairs, and drive forward a formal proposal to be delivered to Washington, D.C. for the purposes of protecting and caring for our shared ancestral lands using traditional knowledge. Over the course of 4 months, many inter-tribal work sessions, all of which I had the distinct honor of facilitating, we shaped the Beartiers Inter-Tribal Coalition proposal addressed to President Barack Obama. On October 15, 2015, we delivered it to the doorsteps of the White House. In the following months, we engaged Congress to explore whether critical components of our proposal could be included in legislation that would meet the needs of our peoples. However, and unfortunately, those efforts failed, at which point the coalition turned its attention to the Obama administration. And as many of you know, those ensuing efforts amounted to a presidential proclamation establishing the Bears Ears National Monument of 1.35 million acres in present-day southeastern Utah on December 28, 2016. I say present-day Utah specifically because if you look at the Aboriginal lands of these particular peoples that we've mentioned, and you see the ways in which they relate to the landscape itself, the proximity speaks for itself. If you lift the political lines from the state of Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and of course those of the counties, and you just set those aside for a moment and you look at the landscape for how it's always been since time immemorial, according to the tribes and what we serve, you begin to see that, it is what it is. These are our neighboring lands, irrespective of the external boundaries of reservation lines. Interestingly, though, of course, the politics of Utah is that if you're not a resident of Utah, you don't have a say. And I won't get too much into those politics, but I think it's important to acknowledge the narrative in which we speak from. And when we produced the proposal, I asked that we lift those lines so that our audience can clearly see where we presently are and how we relate to that 1 point. At the time, it was actually 1.9 million acres. We got 1.45. Several days later, we celebrated on January 7, 2017, in Monument Valley Navajo Nation. January 7 is a day I value for these apparent reasons, but also for another. This was January 7, 2017. And while it would have been incredible to have actually been at the actual signing where President Obama established the monument, this was the next best thing. And of course, this is at the Welcome Center in Aljeto, Navajo Nation, also Utah. And there's a variety of really beautiful people in here from various parts of the land. Navajo, Ute, Hopi, and I shamelessly put myself in this picture. It was really fun because they were handing out t-shirts, and I've always wanted to ask people to roll, wave those flags or wave those t-shirts, and so I finally got my chance. And so somebody snapped a shot out of it, so it was a beautiful celebration. It was 2002, year 2002. I was enrolled at Arizona State University, and I was essentially a kid in search of many answers as to who I was. Unbeknownst to me, I was also yearning for healing. In my very early years, my upbringing had me moved from one community to the next quite frequently, largely because family already required the attention of my mother. And of course, we had to go where work was. Eventually, my mother decided it was time to seek her bachelor's degree in nursing, so we packed up what little we had and moved to the urban settings of Phoenix Metropolitan. I'll never forget my first day of third grade. Everyone looked like you. Which, of course, is to say, not me. Early on, I knew I was different. Not so much by the way I looked, but by the things we did back home on the Navajo Reservation. You see, I was raised Catholic, as well as traditional Navajo, which meant we went home for ceremonies. For those of you who are practicing Catholic, you know very well the Catholic Nicene Creed. It states at the beginning and at the end, quote, "We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen. We believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. We acknowledge one baptism for the forgiveness of sins. To take it further, the word Catholic is derived from Greek interpretations of universal and on the whole, which is essential, of course, saying all-encompassing, right? You, me, the entire universe. Can you imagine as a young boy, the age of my son, or even someone in high school, going home to ceremony where you have a medicine woman or medicine man sitting on the hogan dirt floors, no electricity, performing ceremonies in the Dement language, the Nebuchadnezzar, and then going back to the city area and going to Catholic Mass every Sunday and hearing this verbatim over and over and over again, and then you get to asking yourself, I get it. Right? It never made sense to me. It never added up. And I will always look for answers. I go to my mom, I go to my grandparents, I go to my uncles, and say, please reconcile this for me. I don't get it. We went home and had a Joanji, which is blessing of the ceremony. And then I come back and we go to church and I hear this. One and only apostolic church. It drove me nuts. For some reason, I was that kid who just needed to have those answers. And I never got them as a young boy. Needless to say, this effort remained elusive all the way up through high school. I would ask questions to Catholics, which are now medicine people, as to what was going on in the ceremony and how healing was achieved. He or she would explain in English because that's the language I understood. But like I said, it never added up. I, of course, though, being polite, patient, nodded along as if the explanations hit the nail right on the head. I always wanted to know what it meant to be Navajo, other than what it meant to be a demographic variable. Why I was such an inquisitive kid to this end, I still don't know. It's just one of those things that made me arrogant. Perhaps it speaks to why I gravitate to Curious George stories. I served in the Arizona House of Representatives, and anybody who knows me knows that I love Curious George, because rather than have a donkey or an elephant on my desk, I had Curious George. I eventually graduated from Arizona State University with a degree in sociology, but not before meeting a professor in religious studies who introduced me to concepts that shaped an invaluable platform for truly acquiring knowledge. If you've heard the statement, it's possible to get an education and not acquire knowledge, I've come to learn what that means in ways I never imagined. My first day in class, I'll never forget. He said, quote, if you signed up for this class thinking you're going to learn anything about Native Americans and their religious traditions from this white guy, you might as well go elsewhere. I'll sign your drop-out slip. No questions asked. It would be irresponsible of me to claim authority of this subject matter and profess to be an expert over traditions that aren't mine. It would also border on arrogance as well. But if you're interested in learning how Western lenses grossly misrepresent Native American religious life and how the pervasive nature of such is nothing short of unjust, we must speak and write in their terms, not ours. End quote. Can you imagine walking into a class and hearing that literally probably the first thing that came out of the professor's mouth? I thought it was just going to be a bird place. Oh, I got to get the humanities out of the way, sign up for the studies course, and I walk in and this guy drops the mic. And I said to myself, where is he going with this? And from that day forward, I was hooked. He, as I mentioned, was Kenneth Morrison. He wouldn't let you call him doctor, though he had a PhD. He wouldn't let you call him professor, though he was, of course, our professor. Or he wouldn't let you call him Mr., which, of course, even though he was a man. He preferred Ken. Anything else was an insult, such that his personhood would not be objectified. He would say, "You ited me. Don't." Of course, there was a lot of scholarship behind this and also much healing for him, something I could relate to, but of course in different ways. The path that brought him to that intersect with me was entirely different, and our paths since weren't much different, with the exception of our lasting friendship, mentorship, and what many who were fortunate enough to know him refer to him as kinship. There's a play on the word kinship. My first conversation I had with him was another to remember. He asked me what I was majoring in. I told him sociology, and his immediate response was, "Well, that's dehumanizing." Of course, I wondered, what in the world is this guy talking about? I'm majoring in sociology for humanistic reasons. Really, my humanistic reasons, is what I thought to myself. You see, I came from a bit of a broken home. In short, I hated with a passion the times when my mother and father would have to interface in my presence. They were divorced, and the reasons for were quite unpleasant. My nervousness, anxiety, worry, fear, stress peaked during those times. It's because of trauma experienced prior, right? For those of you who know a thing or two about trauma as a child, you know what this feels like, however which way that was created for you. And the efforts to try to move on beyond that can be very, very challenging. I always told myself I would grow up and do better, such that my kids wouldn't have to experience what I did. How many of you in the audience can relate in your own way? Sociology, in particular sociology of the marriage and family at the time, seemed to offer harbor for alien souls seeking personal resolve. So, when Ken Morrison called my academic endeavors dehumanizing, I of course found myself scratching my head. I eventually came to learn what Ken meant. Sociology, and essentially all social cultural disciplines, study abstract concepts about people rather than engage people interpersonally and on their terms. We know this to be true when we're querying polls, surveys, and census count. Statistics, research methods, and likewise tools try to encapsulate us to formulate theory and assert truths for persons, or people, right? That alone sounds gross, to me anyways. That alone sounds quite detached to my personal experiences. The very experiences that take resident in only my consciousness and only my subconsciousness. Sociology, particularly the marriage and family, it made sense to me. Rationally, it all added up with respect to how this could be. But it still never offered the very specific thing that I needed in order to reach back into my own personal history and resolve it. Theory only goes so far, right? The space between this abstraction and me personally as Eric, how do you close that? Any of you know that? How do you close that space such that where you can eventually move on from the trauma of something that happened perhaps 2 decades ago? I say this not to explain why I despise my degree, and I do, rather to begin to illustrate how professionals trained in Western academics can inadvertently get it wrong. How our intellectual faculties can begin to lend itself to the objectification of a person, or how Ken used to put it, hitting someone. What's scary is that things can be replaced, ignored, discounted, or worse, ended without remorse. I know this, having served in the Arizona State Legislature. There were so many times I would speak and advocate and try to educate my colleagues about what they were doing was essentially a direct attack at the perpetuation of my people. Earlier in my statement, I made the idea that, or expressed the idea that the identity of an Indigenous person is inextricably tied to place. But when you go and uproot the land, unearth the subsurface, go after historical sites, what we refer to as also sacred sites, you are attacking my identity. I don't know how many times I've had to explain this over and over and over to people who know nothing about me, but were perfectly content with a smile on their face. We're going to vote against the future of my people. Now that's having served as an elected official. Years prior to that, I spent 20 years working in the political realm trying to educate contemporary minds to think beyond their own destiny. And it's incredible how you can't seem to get through. So this is why I say this, is that if you're not human, if you're not their own wife, or the level of their own wife, or their own son or child, you're effectively a thing. A thing that can be replaced. My people are not replaceable. Certainly the Siletz people of my son are not replaceable. The Siletz tribe was once terminated, right? Of course, the people were not, so still here. And they speak the truths. And they celebrate life on a go-forward basis, and we're certainly proud of it. Which is one of the reasons why I brought my son here. There's perhaps professional accountability in this day and age, but very little personal accountability. So how do we begin to correct the ways we think about, write about, and work alongside Indigenous peoples of North America and really the world over? How does one go about acknowledging traditional knowledge, ways of knowing that are genuinely alternative from Western ways of knowing? Kent offered scholarship that wove together ontology, epistemology, and axiology, correspondingly person-power gift. These have underpinnings that differentiate Western philosophy from perhaps an Indigenous one. What follows is an approach, not necessarily the approach, to better representing Indigenous peoples. Further, it is introductory and is in no way intended to blow your hair back in one sitting. It is intended to begin to show where and how Western interpretations can and have historically misrepresented Native people in significantly pervasive ways. When we talk about underpins, I want to ask each of you, if you can imagine your current grocery list. Now raise your hands. How many have a grocery list right now? What does it look like? Not necessarily if there's peanut butter and jelly on there, or ham, or steak, or asparagus. I'm not looking at that specifically. I'm looking at the ways in which you structure your list. What does it look like? What does the agenda look like for health? What does any agenda look like? What does an Excel spreadsheet look like? You can imagine, right? It's quite square, top, down, numeric as a sequence. It looks nothing like a circle, right? There's no going full circle. Can you imagine being tasked with presidential proclamation that calls for the use of traditional knowledge to influence, inspire, and shape the federal land management plan, when even the underpins are distinctly different? Top, down, boxy, whereas an Indigenous person thinks, lives, breathes, circular. If you can imagine a north, south, east, and west, but begin on the east side, proceed to the south, go to the west, and then end up in the north. And then, of course, it's spread all over back into the east. That is the philosophy of the Net people. That is the philosophy of Indigenous people, speaking very generally. For Hopi people, they go counterclockwise, same for Zini. For Navajo people, they go clockwise. You're making a grocery list, it goes top down. We think differently. So I'll offer that for a moment. Consciousness. What I'm going to get into is the best of my ability of trying to simplify something extremely complex. I'm going to make some generalizations, and I'm going to ask you to bear with me. I'm going to try to honor what Albert Einstein had to say. So if you don't understand it, if you can't explain something simply, you don't know it well enough. I've spoken to objectivity to a certain degree, and I'm sure folks in the room are quite familiar with what it means to be objective. But let's add some more. It's inanimate, lifeless, impersonal, dispassionate, and unemotional. With respect to sentence structure, it relates to or denotes a case of nouns and pronouns used as the object of a transitive verb or a preposition. I don't know how many of you get flashbacks to elementary school hearing that, but I do. I know that my son does. Just the basics of English, right? One of the first things you learn is a noun. A thing. Something that's lifeless, right? Isn't it interesting that we socialize and educate our children how to think and interpret reality just through the English language? Invariably, with language alone, objects and objectivity exist. Presumably, it's benign. No big deal, right? One of the things you'll see, you'll hear me say time and time again is that other than human persons or conscious, other than human people is not my term. Rather, it's Ken Morrison's term. The idea that rocks can potentially be alive, that wind could actually be a person, intelligent and intentional, the ability to wield causality, either favorably or adversarially to you. Subjectivity. If you were to close your eyes and imagine yourself alone in this auditorium, feel free to do that if you like. Voyage to a mental place where only you exist, alone with your thoughts, personal to only yourself, potentially impersonal because it's only you. A heightened consciousness of the self, a place where rational and irrational exist, ruled by just you, where faith and belief is negotiated and contained. This is subjectivity. It's only you, right? I'm curious, how many of you have heard of Dan Tapani? Dan Tapani is an interesting fellow. He's an expert in business management. He resides in New York City, but he spent 10 years in Hawaii at a Hindu monastery, originally from Western Australia. And if I'm not mistaken, he's also a professor at Harvard, 4 PhDs, really quite an incredible person. Face value. Never met the gentleman, but I love him. One of the things that I find particularly interesting is an exercise that he offers. It says, if you have any unresolved emotions, it's emotion, of course, is energy tied to the subconscious. Whatever experiences you've had in the past, you've got to bring those to the consciousness in order to deal with them. And so, if you begin to take a piece of paper and write it down, and I'm trying to do justice with respect to how he speaks to this, so bear with me. You take a piece of paper and write it down, that energy goes from the subconscious to the conscious because you're reliving it. It goes through the arm into the piece of paper. Once you're done, toss the paper in or the garbage, and it's gone. Or it's actually, something that's transferred. He says that energy can't be destroyed nor created more than what you normally have within your own body, but it can be transferred. And it was really some interesting concepts as I was reading through this, but one of the things that I found so troubling was the fact that we talk about energy as if it's nothing, it's not a lot. And so I would love to have a conversation with respect to how that unfolds from his perspective. But I have to say it worked. I had some unresolved emotional issues. Took out a piece of paper, I wrote down the things I had said. 6 pages later, I tossed it into the fire and offered some cedar, and burned it up. In all of that, I came to find out that forgiving myself was a critical part of my healing. I needed to forgive myself for all of my mistakes, for all of the mistakes that I've made. I believe I've made plenty of mistakes. But I share that not to promote what he's saying so much, but rather as an illustration of what does it mean to be subjective, to think so inward, to go into your own mind, your own consciousness, your own subconscious, and to do something like that is quite a powerful thing. In my mind, it's incredibly subjective. And what I'm getting at is that I'm differentiating objectivity and subjectivity as a binary category from intersubjectivity. It might be too much of a generalization to say these two categories compose Western thought, those being objectivity and subjectivity. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say we discern truth and reality from experiences categorized into these two areas. Certainly, American society is a cross-section of many peoples from around the world who bring varying philosophies, schools of thought, and religious perspective. Not only to irresponsibly transcend them, but with respect to the ways in which we think, speak, and write about indigenous populations, I would say 9 times out of 10, we are seeing such through lenses evidenced by literature itself. Now, earlier in what I was saying was that we have gross misrepresentation of Native American peoples pervasive across the country. Most literature that you pick up, even written by Native American authors, they step into potholes, they step into traps, and start to begin to convey what does it mean to be indigenous, which I've come to learn is being a good relative. Having my son here speak is him being a good relative to his people, to his land. What does it mean to be a good relative to you? It might be, your idea of being a relative might just consist of your son, your father, your grandparents, maybe even friends who are family, and that's it, right? But from an indigenous perspective, kinship extends beyond the blood relatives. It goes into clanship. It might even go into the people. It goes into the water people. It goes into the air people. It goes into specific places such as Bears Ears. It goes into what we refer to as sacred mountains. It goes to the oceans. It goes to the cosmos. It goes to the sun. It goes to the moon. Falls sky and the earth. That's a lot of relatives, right? So what does it mean to be a good relative? Well, of course, you have love. You have joy. There's a lot of responsibilities that come from that. And the net thinking, our governance is CAT. CAT is our governance. It's a very complex and dense, difficult to understand if you want to raise with it. But it governs the ways in which we are to conduct ourselves personally and in a familial context. And it includes other than human persons. So in order to be a good relative, there's a lot to live up to. And it extends far beyond the Western notions of conventional family. So when we start talking about, writing about, speaking about, advocating about, it begs the question, or rather, it begs the statement. You can't protect what you don't know. No different than you can't heal what you can't diagnose. I'm going to repeat that again. You can't protect what you don't know. No different than you can't heal what you can't diagnose. And I say that because in conservation, we talk a lot about protection, right? If you pick up a book written on Native American people, somewhere in the foreword or somewhere along the lines, it says, I'm doing this to protect Native American culture. I'm doing this to protect this or that about these particular people. But invariably, as you go through that text, you find yourself thinking, does this person really know who these people are? Again, you can't protect what you don't know. Rather, you can actually begin to take a critical look at your own intellectual lenses and see how you just might be imposing your own ideas and interpretations of reality on the people who see things entirely different. Mutually exclusive. Further, you'll hear from the leaders of Bears Ears that Bears Ears is about healing. It is. Bears Ears is about healing. A really interesting story I'll share with you is that the very first, can you hear me when I step over here? Kind of mic up. When I facilitated the very first session of the Bears Ears and the Trouble Coalition, we had just agreed to establish it in a formal way. And I pulled out my white papers and I got my markers and I started asking the question, the fundamental question, why do we do what we do? And there must have been about 40 people in the room. Medicine people, lawyers, conservationists, activists, elected tribal leaders, many others. And they all began to respond to that question. Why do we do what we do? Why are we even here? And we filled up, those large sticky pads, stuck on the wall. And 80% of it spoke to traditional ways of being, ceremony, language, herbal medicine, access in order to perform ceremonies, things of this nature. And I ended up saying, okay, very good. But what does that mean? Can you put it in just one or two words? What does this mean? Because we're going to have to convey to the American public, these are federal public lands we're talking about, we have to convey to the American public, what is this really about? Because in order to access that body of knowledge is challenging. And my son, who happens to be, I think, 70 years old, not this one, of course, clan-wise makes for an interesting arrangement of familial context. His name is Willie Grahams. He said, healing. That's what it's about. And that is what it's about. When we start talking about climate change, what are we really talking about? Scientists will talk about, greenhouse gases and concentration of this or that in the atmospheric arena such that we've passed the point of no return and, it sounds like all hell's breaking loose and the end of the world's coming, right? But really, when you ask an Indigenous person about the ill effects of climate change, they're going to simply say, she's not well. How do we negotiate Mother Earth back to being well? How do you do that for yourself? If you have a bump, a bruise, a flu, a virus, what have you, what do? You go to the doctor, right? And you just hope that that doctor can diagnose specifically what the issue is, right? Particularly if it's a serious one. If there is not a diagnosis that is accurate because that particular person is a proficient in their field, you're not going to solve that issue. You're not going to be able to cure it, right? Medicine people, the whole body of knowledge that understands the ill effects of climate change in the ways that the vast majority of the American population don't. There's a whole body of knowledge. We call it traditional knowledge. Ways in which you can negotiate healing is something that our people have. And it's very specific to the people, which is to say, I'm not going to disclose, the real thrust of all of that to people who belong to the global communities or to the youth. And they're not going to be the same to us. And part of the reason is not just that it's proprietary, but also too is that it very much goes to that particular land. When you talk about Siletz people, there is nowhere else in this world that they belong. Because again, their identity is rooted specifically in a place.
For Diné people, we have 4 mountains, often referred to as sacred mountains. Those are folks who know me well know that I don't like to use the word sacred because it comes from the word sacrament. And we're getting Judeo-Christian influence into our interpretations of reality, which makes a giant mess of it. But in general, sacred sites. It's funny, Donald Trump uses the word sacred all the time, and I'm thinking, for me is sacred, that's not what we're referring to. So in other words, it's a loaded word. It means everything and it means nothing. So I usually steer clear of the word sacred. Same thing with spiritual. I don't know what it means when you talk about being spiritual. It's a very slippery word. English does this to us. English is such a very interesting language, particularly as it relates to objectivity. To say something is an it is to objectify. But when you speak in English, you inevitably refer to things as it's or that's. I always find it funny when the baby is born and doesn't have a name, what do you call it? It. Right? What's its name? Until that baby actually gets a name, it feels more appropriate when you refer to the baby, right? It's no different in Native American cosmologies. Water has a name. It's no different than yours. It has agency. Sometimes they're gendered. Sometimes they're not. The eclipses, the sun, they all have names. No different than you and I. Just because they're not human doesn't mean that they're not alive or have the potential to be alive. And this is the beauty in all of it, right? Is that if you're able to communicate with what would be considered an inanimate object, and make offerings such that where when we part from our conversation, you're whole and I'm whole, and we actually come out to be mutually beneficial. Imagine that. Imagine the ability to negotiate with these other than human beings a way out of climate change. Imagine that. But there's a whole body of knowledge that comes with it. And so when I see lawmakers in the state of Arizona, or when I read about state of Oregon, or of course what's transpired in Washington, D.C., and I see that there is just absolutely no comprehension, no idea that you have an indigenous population that has an incredible amount of power to begin to resolve some of these issues. But it requires people like you in this room to begin to comprehend what I'm trying to say. If you're a student in law school, you have an incredible opportunity when you become lawyers, or if you go into policy, or you go into administration, to hear an indigenous advocate, an elder, or someone like my son speak their truths and say, you know what? I don't know a thing they're talking about, but I know they know something that we don't have. Further, they should speak first, because they're from these lands, right? It was really interesting to learn all the things that I did sitting at the White House Council on Environmental Quality's offices, to engage in some of these conversations. To talk about the Antiquities Act of 1906, what that can and can't do. A lot of the conversation, as you can imagine, goes to, the tribes in its original proposal saw equal distribution of authority in managing these lands. Wherever there was undue delay or impasse, the secretaries would have the ability to break it. But up until that point, the tribes would have equal distribution of authority. Did we get it? No. Because the Obama administration felt like it didn't have the latitude pursuant to the Antiquities Act to do that. Maybe they were right, maybe they weren't. But nonetheless, though, while you engage in those types of discussions that at the end of the day have nothing to do with indigenous peoples, you can also have concurrent conversations where you simply say traditional knowledge is genuinely exclusive from Western knowledge. Of course, the law, as you know, it functions within the realm of the Western thought, right? The whole country is built on it. But you have something concurrent here that is extremely powerful. And so, when you start to take a careful look at the proclamation of the Bears Ears National Monument, it says a couple of things. Protection of the Bears Ears area will preserve its cultural, prehistoric, and historic legacy and maintain its diverse array of natural and scientific resources ensuring that the prehistoric, historic, and scientific values of this area remain for the benefit of all Americans. It's actually not what I want to read. Pardon me for a moment. Turn it over. The traditional ecological knowledge amassed by the Native Americans whose ancestors inhabited this region, passed out from generation to generation, offers critical insight into the historical and scientific significance of the area. Such knowledge is itself a resource to be protected and used in understanding and managing this landscape sustainably for generations to come. That, of course, was in the whereas. When you get into the therefores, it states, to that end, in developing or revising the management plan, the Secretary shall carefully and fully consider integrating the traditional and historical knowledge and special expertise of the Commission. The Commission, of course, consisting of 5 representatives of the 5 tribes. The expertise. I don't know of any federal law out there other than this that acknowledges traditional knowledge as something to be protected. Not only protected, but also to be used. And I want to go back to the point of what I was just saying. Can you protect what you don't know? The answer is no. Just understanding that alone, proceeding from that point going forward, I think is really critical in terms of how the federal government and even yourselves relate to tribal peoples and the governments. Second is that same sentence that I stated earlier is that you can't heal what you can't diagnose. And some of you might be wondering, why did I bring up Tim Morrison other than his scholarship? No, when we talk about healing, which is what Heritage is about, and we don't talk about ourselves, then we're missing the point. When I talk about landscapes, be it Bears Ears, Coco's Lee, which is the mountain which I live by, I always say there's no way that if the land is not well, I'm going to be well. When I'm well, the land is well. And as a people, it's the same way. So we're hurting now. You can see it with all the social ills. You can see it in how we treat one another. We can feel it. And so when we begin to talk about the idea of healing, and we also talk about climate change, they're closely related. And so I really want to offer to you this idea of intersubjectivity, this idea of having an interpersonal relationship with other than human persons, and proceeding from there. Remove objectivity from your consciousness. Remove subjectivity from your consciousness. And begin to explore this idea of intersubjectivity. You just might begin to see things from an Indigenous perspective. There's one more statement that I'll never forget, that when I read it, I thought to myself, immediately of Ken Morrison. Albert Einstein said, no problem can be solved with the same level of consciousness that created it. You know, later, the late 1800s, I think we had the invention of the first internal liquid fuel engine combustion, right? Of course, now we have climate change. Vehicles. But of course, he had the technology that created coal-fired plants. Sorry to say is that my tribe is one of the largest polluters with respect to the Navajo generators, Peabody coal mine. It begs the question, why do we do that? So in other words, Navajo people aren't perfect. We champion, and to this day are still trying to save a power plant and a coal mine that is devastating Mother Earth. It's counterintuitive, obviously. While some of our people are doing what they need to do to make ends meet, I don't blame them. But there has to be a time when we begin to muster the courage to own our identity and to dig deep into our ability to create, to innovate, to own our identity, and to call forward a new version of ourselves. And I invite all of you to join us. There's no reason why you can't do this. There's no reason why you can't join us. And I want to share with you Ken Morrison. He looks a lot like you. Professor Ken Morrison joined the AC faculty in 1983 and taught here for 25 years before he retired in 2008. He earned his BA at St. Dunstan's University and his MA and PhD at the University of Maine. Ken was noted for being a caring mentor who insisted on high standards and who generously helped his students to achieve them. He served for many years as a director of undergraduate education in the Department of Religious Studies and was selected as Professor of the Year in 2001 by the ASU Parents Association. His research focused on Native American religion and history. He was the author of The Embattled Northeast, the elusive ideal of Abenaki Euro-American relations, The Solidarity of Ken, Ethno History, Religious Studies in the Algonquian French Religious Encounter, and numerous scholarly articles. Prior to ASU, he taught American Indian history at UCLA. Ken passed away in Florence, Oregon, January 7, 2012. Not far from here, right? On January 7th, the same day we celebrated the proclamation of the Bears Ears National Monument, just 5 years later. For me, personally, it meant so much. Because this gentleman was the guy I happened to walk into a religious studies course who transformed my life. There was a time when I didn't know who I was. There was a time when I even questioned whether I wanted to be the man. Growing up in the urban settings, predominantly white population, Catholic. In 1998, I hit all 52 Catholic masses. I'm not Catholic anymore. I don't even claim Christianity. The scholarship that this gentleman provided for me was a platform for all kinds of new opportunities, new possibilities, new consciousness. If this type of knowledge and this type of philosophy, rooted in who I am, can begin to transform one life and inspire what became the Bears Ears National Monument, if that can happen, it tells me that really anything can happen. Right? In an institution like the University of Oregon, where somebody who's not native, who knows his role, who knows his responsibilities, as somebody who claims a PhD, claims to be an expert, but knows he cannot claim authority over Native American religious life or any Indigenous peoples for that matter, with respect to how we interpret reality, that kind of humbleness and to still be able to have an impact on me that would eventually influence the barriers as we know it. It tells me that each one of you have that potential. It tells me that each one of you can change the world. It's awesome. And, coming here, I thought to myself, wait a second. Ken came to Oregon to finish his last days. And he died in Florence, Oregon. And, his t-shirt I love his t-shirt, I wish I had it. can't read it. It says, in a participatory universe, there are no neutral observers. Which is to say, each one of us, whether we want to or not, we affect the other. If you're raised in a Hogan, you know this because there are no bedroom walls. What you say and do is felt by the other. And Hogan is a microcosm of the universe. So what you do and say, for better or worse, has an effect. And I just love the t-shirt because it speaks to the wholesome tension.
And lastly, before I finish up, when I was coming here, I was going through some old emails, and there's this one dated December of 2010, and I'll read part of it. It's part of a tribute to Ken. Here, just found your invitation to support a celebration. That's my son here. While I am not going to be able to make it, I am sending congratulations. I'm finishing an article on Hollow on post-Cartesian anthropology for inclusion in a British book on animism. When that is done, I'll turn my attention to packing, downsizing in preparation for a late spring move to Oregon. My new home base in Florence will always be open to you and yours. By the way, my email address will remain asu.edu. If you find yourself free for a moment in the upcoming holiday madness, parents, I am the Scrooge, and parents, perhaps we can grab a cup of coffee. I can't believe that Sequoia is full. Yes, can.
That quite possibly was the last mention of our season. And I can't remember the last time I saw him, just because I never thought he would leave us. I'm sure you didn't expect to hear about him with respect to Bears National Monument. But given that my son was going to be here, and that Ken, I'm sure, is with us here tonight, I felt it was particularly important to be able to show why I do what I do. I'm now and that means to be a good relative. I'm not always. That's my purpose. And I hope I convey that to you. Yeah. I'm happy to take some questions and answers for however long you want to. I just have two video slides. This is looking east to west. Very, as you can see, it's very small at the end. This is a canyon. Of course, there at the bottom, right dwarf. And then, of course, looking south to north. The very first picture that we saw, it's a matter of photo credit to Jim Peterson for that. I'm happy to take questions.
How do things stand right now with respect to the monument? It sounds like it's being
You know, the question is how are things standing right now with respect to the monument, the challenges and the court cases you were referring to? That's a good question. I just continue my participation with the Tribal Coalition and a year and a half ago, maybe, give or take some. So I'm not intimately involved with how the lawsuit is going. But from what I do gather, the folks who are, it's hopeful. We are expecting for the lawsuits to fall in our favor. I know there was a recent one specific to even just a location. There was an effort to move it out of Washington. hold of that. From the very outset, most legal minds observed that, pursuant to the Antiquities Act, that the current president doesn't have the authority to undo them, only to create them. And so we're still standing by that. So we're expecting, at some point, probably not necessarily in the near future, but some positive result. How did John know that?
Thank you for everything you said. I was really interested in your perspective on diversity and how you can encourage that. Stuff like affirmative action, the pros and cons. I feel like getting people involved, especially from diverse backgrounds, is really hard. How do you think, what is your perspective on how you can encourage diversity?
Just in general?
In general, yeah.
Diversity in general. That's a tough question. The reason why I say that is because times are changing quickly. The politics that it reveals nationally is, I know this for a fact because folks across the aisle have actually said it in their own ways and sometimes explicitly, is that they're keenly aware that the demographics are shifting such that the majority will become the minority. And they're quite worried about that. You see it manifest in a variety of issues with healthcare, immigration, and so on and so forth. So when you start talking about diversity, I immediately begin to think about the Latino community. I remember hearing Henry Cisneros, the former health secretary, about 15 years ago say there was a statistical certainty that the majority would become the minority and the Latinos would be the predominant. I remember thinking back then to myself, well, what does that mean with respect to Indigenous peoples? How are we going to relate to the Latino community when they're potentially effectively in power, right? When I think about diversity, I think about power plays. Because at the end of the day, that's what works, right? Power which way power reveals itself. When I think about diversity, I just simply think about a lot of the stuff that I talked about here. Where is our humanity? Do we know who we are and where we come from? A lot of folks don't know. And that's okay. The question becomes, though, is are we helping folks figure that out? And are we doing it in a civil manner? Are we doing it in a fair manner? Are we imposing ourselves on the other? Even within the Navajo communities, I was once told, you're Navajo, we're Diné. And I asked the question, well, what's the difference? Well, one answer was, the true Diné were the ones who weren't captured on the long walk. Your ancestors got captured and went on the long walk. And I thought, wow, that's a new one. So that even within our own communities, we have the lack of understanding and the sympathy to begin to understand who we are. And rather than attack, how do you heal it? And I think that's one of the more inspiring aspects of Bears Ears is that right now the fight is so tense. Lots of animosity, lots of anger. And a lot of it goes to families and generations back. Even amongst all of it, you ask yourself, how do you heal from that? There's answers. And I think we don't have the courage a lot of the times to try to explore that. And even if there's just a little bit, there's an incredible amount of hope. I don't know of any profession other than Ken Morrison who have shown me what that looks like. Out of all of academia, not just in the United States but internationally, he's the one professor who's inspired this idea of healing from an Indigenous perspective as opposed to something else. And I guess that's where my answer is coming from. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, definitely says okay.
Sure.
How would Ken Morrison describe his spiritual beliefs? Or what not just what name of his religion, but what was his conception of the human being, of consciousness, of his conception of the self?
Well, he saw himself not as the self at all, but in relation to others. His identity very much went to the collective, which of course was his family. That's how he created it. So in other words, he had blood relatives, and he also had friends who were nothing more, or very much like blood relatives. And I think he rooted his identity in all of that. He wasn't perfect at it either. I think one of the things that a lot of us come to understand is that he didn't actually always live it, which is what it means to be human, right? Not be perfect. It's always continued to strive what that is. So to answer your question, he was big on kinship. And I remember he once asked me, can you go do this or can you go do that? And I said, oh, I don't feel like it. And he said, well, that's really subjective. That's quite selfish of you. Almost impersonal. Almost sounds like you're hardly native. And it was just one of those things where, and so now every time I think, oh, I don't want to do that, I immediately think of that time. And I think, what would a good relative do right now? What are my obligations? Because who I am invariably goes to who they are. And if they're well, I'm well. And that's what it means to be Indigenous. Specifically to the people, that comes with very particular protocols and ways of doing things. But you can own that very much so. Any questions? The gentleman in the very front.
You spoke about the importance of land as part of the identity of Indigenous people. I think my own belief is that actually a sense of place is actually important to everybody, but many of us don't have it. And I guess I'm wondering whether you have any thoughts on what people of settler descent might do to begin to cultivate a connection to place. It's healing in that regard.
Honestly, I don't know. And I say that in the context of, as one who's still trying to make sense of my own relationship with it. It's I've often wondered that same question myself. In all honesty, one question that I wonder, and I know some folks back home will look at me and say, you're nuts, and just not get chastised for this, but I actually wonder if everyone's ambitious. And somewhere along the way, schools of thought shaped our consciousness differently. The Enlightenment period, for example, right? It was like the 1500s, where philosophers began to up rationality as something paramount. But when recently I went to participate in the expert rights of, the expert mechanism of the rights of Indigenous peoples of the United Nations just this past summer. And to go there to see Indigenous peoples looking with the fairest of skin, with the darkest of skin, the whole spectrum. And to see them speak their languages, from Russia to New Guinea to parts of Africa, New Zealand, so on and so forth. My immediate thought it's irrespective of what they look like. I'm just wondering where you're from. And how does that reconcile with your identity? And then the next question I thought was, if you go back far enough, it just could be that everyone in this room is Indigenous to some part of the planet, right? When you start talking about Navajo people, it goes to a very specific place. On my reservation, I shouldn't even call it that, on Deneta, Navajo land, sand dunes, according to the Geological Survey, are stretching across the land at 150 feet every year. With that type of exponential growth of sand dunes, you have to wonder, are we going to even be able to live on it? Is my son going to even be able to live on it? And if that means a mass exodus of our people from where we belong, pursuant to Aboriginal stories, creation stories, what does that mean? And it breaks my heart when I think about the Aleut and the Inuit up north. Where some villages have already been fully displaced. What does that mean to them, where quite likely their creation stories speak to them having to be where they're at? Because, of course, the ill effects of climate change has disrupted that at a devastating level. So, to answer your question, I would actually wonder, can you trace back all the way back to the land in which you just want to be indigenous to? And what does that mean? Because when I go and visit other people's lands, like for example here, I don't claim familial context. Of course, with the exception of my son, I'm not from here. Therefore, I'm not about to go and claim stake to these lands if I'm not welcomed. I have my own lands. And so, but what does that mean for the average American citizen where this isn't feasible for obvious reasons? When I'm on the other side of the planet, like I was when I was in Switzerland, I still knew where home was. The water was water, the air was air, the fire was fire, the land was land. And if there's anything that can be said about home on the traditional dwelling battle with people, is, like I said, it's a microcosm of the universe, so you can still relate to home irrespective of where you're actually at. So I hope that kind of begins to answer your question at least a little. Agree?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for 2 words that I heard tonight that I've been waiting to hear in panels and keynoters since I've been coming since 1997. And hearing the word healing come up and look beautiful. Those are words I don't hear often in the panels. And it just makes me so happy to hear that, because I think it really does come down to what brings us together. And I'm just so glad that you're speaking to how to begin to come together. And as far as like how to connect with place, I think one of the simplest things I've learned to do is to just go sit. Go find a place that calls me by my heart and to get acquainted. And it's like leaving a relative if you have to move. But it's not a bad thing to get acquainted and to love that place and to go somewhere else. Because every place you go, you do that, there's more love and there's more connection. And I'm just so glad that you come to speak this and that there's an opening for this here. And for us to begin to learn how to ask questions the way that you've been showing us and the way that you're meant to connect it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome.
I'm interested in collaborative and certified suppliers. What parts of kinship and the philosophy that we just talked about can you use to create that collaborative and keep it working in the
Well, I think, Navajos and Utes historically have always butted heads. Lots of wars, if you will. Some of them Navajo and Hopi as well. I think the folks who established the original Bears Ears, we have a type of consciousness that could see, well, first of all, the Bears Ears National Monument, the 1.9 million acre map is understood to have upwards to 100,000 archaeological sites. So the hard evidence, if you will,
clearly showcases that these Aboriginal lands belong to men. It's just not the thought. We're talking about a number of the pueblos in New Mexico, San Juan de Paiute. These are federally recognized tribes who are not part of the 5 tribes. So we're actually talking about a lot more. Also potentially Southern Utah and Colorado as well. I think what you're seeing is not just with respect to barriers, but on a global context, Indigenous peoples begin to establish its own kind of kinship. We saw it with Standing Rock, the solidarity amongst tribes is escalating, obviously. But I think there's a sentiment amongst tribes that are starting to see, if we don't set aside our differences now and find the common ground, we're going to be in a world of hurt. And I think that message is, we're not just thinking it, but we can feel it. I think it's inherent. Whether you see it in dreams or whether you see it in a diagnosis or just the people talking or just driving down the road. I mean, not what people saw 2 horses frozen in mud about a year ago. We saw a similar effect in New Zealand. By the way, the Maori people in New Zealand are trailblazing far more than what the United States is with respect to conservation from a vegan perspective. They passed 2 different laws. One of them is the Kangaroo Red Act that recognizes a body of land as a living, breathing being, and is therefore deserving of protection under the human word and corporation. Corporation stuff is absurd in my mind, but nonetheless, it has those synthetic protections. They subsequently did the same thing with the body of water. It was a real defense. Incredible stuff. And nonetheless, though, the fact that I know that and I can interface and meet with these people, the architects behind me, to basically cross-pollinate and say, how did you do this? Why did you do it? What does it really mean for your people? Particularly to perpetuate your people, the language, culture, so on and so forth. That type of solidarity where you're seeing the wins, where historically we showed more so the losses and the sympathies of one another. We're winning. And we're achieving. And it's going to continue. So I think when we start talking about that type of relationship, intertribal relationship, it means a lot great deal.
You have spoken about self-forgiveness.
Yep.
And as somebody who has struggled with self-hatred for a lot of my adult life, getting back to programming from early childhood, I'm wondering if you could share some wisdom on self-forgiveness, or what's been helpful for you.
I'll be real honest with you. I was raped when I was in second grade. It created, unbeknownst to me all these years, an addiction. And if you've heard the adage, hurt people, yeah, that was me. And I didn't realize those consequences until the negative reciprocity made its way back. You talk about karma, right? What goes around comes around. Well, in Indigenous philosophies, there's positive reciprocity and negative reciprocity. I'll never forget in one of Ken Morrison's classes, light bulbs went off and I began to realize this intersubjectivity actually opened up a whole new reality where the universe was quite dangerous. The things that I was told that were discounted as simply superstition, myth, or that's just what those Indians say, it's not really true, all of a sudden became quite real. So in other words, our conduct in which we live in every single moment, even the nature of thought or even voice. Speaking is also just to be generative. You can actually generate a reality for yourself and your family. So back home, I would say, be careful what you say. then of course what you do even more so. In Navajo, they refer to Nitsahakes, which is thought. And then you go, that starts east, and then you go south, which is Nahatapa, which is planning. Then you go to Ina, which is living, life. And then finally you get to Sihas, which is reflection. When you go that full circle and you engage that philosophical cognitive map, you begin to realize that positive and negative reciprocity is contingent on the ways in which you think, speak, and act. And boy, did it come back hard on me. Some of my greatest lessons were when I was under extreme pain, extreme emotional pain. It was almost as if that suffering pushed me to a whole new level of consciousness to where it finally hit me. And I said, I did this to myself. I did this. And I take 100%, full 100% accountability for everything that I've done. So that's in part to answer your question. So owning every one of your actions, 100% of it was the first step. And of course, when you go through counseling, you begin to recognize that. And the first start is accepting who you are and what you've done. But then from that point, then you have a starting point, a legitimate starting point to heal. And this isn't something that I knew. I don't say that as a cop-out or a justification for my misgivings, but just literally within the last year to 2 years, I've come to this recognition that the reciprocity made its way. And you can continue to live this life. Not that I'm a horrible person, but the things that I did was just, I look at myself and think to myself, wow, you are really out of your mind in being a horrible relative. And so, to answer your question, it was one, coming to those terms, and then secondly, as I mentioned earlier, was when you have that type of trauma taking residence in your subconscious, you're not even aware of it, right? It's tucked away. And sometimes you have to dig deep into that subconscious. Surface it. Look at it for what it is and deal with it. And interestingly, it's been a long time coming. I've made significant progress with respect to my own personal healing. But once I got a conscience and I wrote it, earlier I alluded to, you put it in the fire and it goes away from this particular perspective I cited. It was just simply energy transfer. But to me, actually, it was simply offering to the fire. Fire being. Help me join and commune with it in our reality to take me somewhere where I need to go. And take this from me. Part of that is not simply saying, do away with it, I'm going to go live my life all which way, but rather genuinely and honestly, and these other human people know whether or not you're honest. Because at the end of the day, it boils down to whether or not you're honest with yourself and you're willing to make those significant changes in life. Because clearly we're intelligent beings. We know right from wrong. But do you have the self-discipline to be brutally honest with yourself? Because when you do that, the whole world opens up in a whole different way. And that was my experience. And interestingly is that when you listen to some of the Berser stories, how those movements actually came to be, still in your counsel, I think I can speak to this a little bit, is the bear was actually, was a head that was severed. It was about 10 warriors back in graciousness and thrown to this direction, and the way in which it landed, you see the two big twin buttes. But when you begin, I won't get into the story, but when you look at the real substance, that everything that led up to that, it was rooted in, for Diné people, you have the Trist, who was the creator. And all of the things that he did was greed, it was selfishness, it was egotistical attitudes, it was narcissism. It was all of these things that we all know what they are. And when you think in those terms, you eventually find yourself in root. I don't need to get political, but yesterday I was watching, Cohen speak. There's a part of me that wants to believe that guy. Simply because of what I went through. He used the word redemption. I'll never forget that. He laid out a number of things that he's done that were just horrible acts. I'm not sure I actually do believe him. However, there was a part of me that just simply sat there and thought to myself, here's a guy who has gone through a living hell. Here's a guy who has reflected on his thoughts, his plans, his actions, his reflections. At the end of the day, and if he's willing to be brutally honest with himself, he just might find himself doing things the rest of his life that probably shock America. We'll see. Once he gets out of his 3-year prison. But nonetheless, though, given all the things that I've come to understand from traditional knowledge is that there's a sliding scale where every human has the potential to become a monster. Right? Everyone in this room has that potential. It's unlikely, I think, but we have that potential. We've seen it in human history. But then the next question I think logically comes is, can you slide on that spectrum back? I've talked to a lot of folks and I asked them, if you actually engage in monstrous activities, can you recover from that? Most people say no. Some people say, if you still have some time on this earth, you just won't. But the thing is that, unfortunately, is that reciprocity, for better or worse, can be unforgiving. And I think that's what makes us accountable, right? That's what makes things scary. All the more reason why we have to be very conscious of every single thought that we generate. And be very conscious and responsible of every single word we speak on a go-forward basis.
Thank you so much for your sharing. I have some thoughts. I'm trying to formulate them into a question. I think I know where my question is. But you speak of some really profound things that I think speak to the heart of everybody who would come to a conference like this. Our desire to be of healing to the earth, our desire to be active, our desire to make a difference in the political realm. And thank you for mentioning Mr. Cohen. He, like I, my mother and my grandmother were Holocaust survivors, as is his family. I was blessed to be raised by a beautiful elder who shared a lot that enriched my life deeply, my grandmother. When you talk about redemption, I've been thinking about there's the Hebrew word for that is teshuvah. And teshuvah means turning. And it's an active verb. It's the idea that no matter what we do, we can turn to, we can, no matter how far we walk away from the divine, the moment we turn, we make the active choice to turn and head towards the divine, head towards what is of spirit, then the reciprocity of that action is bringing goodness into our lives. So I feel great inspiration listening to this man, and I felt that he was coming from his heart, and I felt that when I've looked at pictures of him walking into the courtroom, and his daughter is always with him, and his daughter has the most painful look on her face. And I know that he's weighing the sum total of his actions on his family and realizing that his impact and that he's going to be taking himself away from his children. But I'm really, and I want to thank you for your courage and your strength of heart, courage, for sharing about trauma and your trauma in particular. I've tried to walk the path of understanding how to make political change to a deeply personal place of healing and seeing it as a continuum, as a spectrum, and as not separating the political from the spiritual, from the psychological, from the sociological. And so I've endeavored always to come back from going to this place of healing to how can I take whatever I learned and heal myself and create strength in myself so that I can go out and be active in the world and create healing. And I guess my question would be of you, I'm fascinated by that you were in the Arizona legislature, which I can imagine is a much more challenging place to be than the Oregon legislature, where we're blessed to have some good, decent people. I'm wondering perhaps if you could speak to how do we, and I'm very conscious of how you address the idea of even the concept of spirituality is making an object, it's an other, and separating it from our beings. But I'm wondering, could you speak perhaps on what it means to be a person of spirit, working in a very specific political world, like you were in the legislature? What guidance would you have for all of us for how to be spirit beings working to change the world?
You know, when I entered the state legislature, for me it was twofold. One, of course, is studying the bills. But the other part of it was studying the culture of the bills. Every organization has a culture, a better words. University of Oregon has its own culture. There is no business schools. Generally, the state legislature does. The reason why I did that, that included studying very carefully choice of words, mannerisms, the way people walk, how they touch each other, pats on the back, sashay through the halls, all of these different things. Swagger, when they lost swagger. And because at the end of the day, I always argue that there's quite possibly nothing more powerful than culture. Because you can put together the most intelligent bill, you can put together the most sensible bill, and put it before the legislature. But if the culture, there's politics as well too, but there's a culture there that if you don't change that, you're never going to get just resolve for the people who need it most. I'll speak very fondly about my colleague who I know very well, and somebody who I don't know very well, but they're very similar. One is Representative Salablanc. She represents a district in Tempe. I personally watched her for certain periods of time transform the culture of the state legislature. One person. So I know it can be done. She rattled the place. So much to the point to where I saw people change their behavior. It showed me that there's a possibility to actually substantially, significantly change the culture of lawmaking. A lot of lawmakers go to assemblies to create laws. There are some lawmakers who want to do that, but they really want to go there and change the whole place. Change how it thinks, how it feels, how it behaves. Particularly where undoing the concentration of power. How one person can hold up the entire bill as if he's on, it's not democracy at all. But the other person is that Isela Blanc reminds me of this Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She did precisely what Isela Blanc was doing. She's setting out to not just change laws, but she's setting out to change how businesses go, to transform that entity into something that looks actually more like democracy. How this answers your question, I don't know. But to me, it's we need more of that, and I think you're seeing it. Because the laws are just mere reflections of what society is willing to tolerate. That's how I see it. So to change society, you change the culture of society, and of course the institutions that come from that, you're going to see significant change in a short period of time. And I think we are starting to see that. I'm not a big fan of folks who root themselves in partisan
anything. I get really excited when I see lawmakers root themselves in human truths. And that's what Ocasio-Cortez is doing. She's pushing up against the Democratic establishment, right? She's upsetting a lot of them, too. And I tried to do that. I rooted my truths in creation stories of the people, which I know the San Carlos people, the Donaldson people, and the Yavapai people, and the Zuni people, and the Sipai people, so on and so forth, understand that. And I think some people would say, well, isn't that favoring one people over the other? No, I'm actually favoring the First Peoples. And I think the vast majority of America can benefit from that type of philosophy, as I've showed here today. So, whether you're someone like Representative Isabel Blanc, someone like Ocasio-Cortez, or someone like myself, who we root ourselves in something deeper than partisanship, you're going to get that glory that we're seeing and experiencing. And it's absolutely necessary. I don't know if that answers your question, but in all of that, because they're reconciling their thoughts, their actions, with something tangible to people and not party, you're invariably going to get movements of healing. And that's what Bears is. Unfortunately, the narrative behind Bears is so much about the lawsuit, the Antiquities Act, the politics of Utah Congressional delegation, San Juan County, so on and so forth. That's a lot of stuff. For me, I put that stuff aside for the most part and I concentrate on really what it's about, which is healing. There's a philosophy of indigenous people still. And what you end up getting is a great deal of success because it's rooted in something deeper.
Thank you so much for everything that both of you, Sequoia, you as well, have shared, the way that you showed up and been present with us. And I was listening to a cyclical way of speaking to healing as a kind of a common ground. And I also caught at the beginning of your talk this note of it being maybe a term that I don't remember the exact word, but it's just like or unsettling. It's also a term that's unsettling for me. One of my thoughts that first come to mind is there room for multiplicity in common ground? Is there any requirement or assimilation when we talk about common ground? And so I was just wondering if you'd be willing to share with respect to both, but also in centering like what inclusion really means, to include your perspective of what common ground also means to you, and its relationships with Bears Ears and other significant places of accessibility.
Generally speaking, I did speak to this the outset, I don't like it when politicians say common sense solutions. Because what's common has been devastating to indigenous people since contact, right? There's been waves of that. So whenever I hear common sense solutions, I immediately kind of get frightened. What are you talking about? It was normal to have slavery, right? It was normal to have a lot of things that have been so devastating to certain people. When I hear common sense solutions and I hear common ground, those triggers kind of go off, right? But like I said, though, is that if we can't find the common ground, then there's really no hope. And what I mean by that is, I think there's an incredible amount of effectiveness and efficiency that can be had when we define our commonalities first by how we differ. Because that provides a legitimate starting point, as opposed to one that's not real, right? That's fictitious. And I think that's where you get the lack of trust. If you can go to an Indigenous population and acknowledge who they are on their own terms, and truly demonstrate what that respect looks like, you're going to be able to achieve a lot more in a shorter period of time, as opposed to starting on something that's not real, that's not honest, that's disingenuous. Where's the old adage goes, what's long is short and short is long. There's actually a book written on the speed of trust, right? Trust meaning you go to character and as well as competency. That intersection will yield an incredible amount of speed. I think when we start talking about collaboration, particularly amongst populations that, in the more recent years, have more differences than commonalities, if you can establish that level of trust, which is what we have in previous years, you can achieve a great deal in a short period of time. I mean, the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Interior here came out of his family vacation time to sit down with us, partly these were his own words, simply because he had heard the Navajo Nation and Hopi tribe were actually getting along and co-chairing. He had to see it for himself. That was at the outset. 5 months later, we produced a 60-plus page formal proposal that was unprecedented on multiple levels, and then began to determine our own path, of self-determination, such that now we have 1.35 million acres of something that probably you had told somebody 5-10 years prior this is going to happen with us, they'll give up. I think it's a perfect showcase of what can happen when we do find out those commonalities. Mind you, concurrently, the Navajo Nation and the Hopi tribe were still in dispute in court over becoming the Descheenie National Monument and repatriation prior to that, among other things. So it's not to say that the quarreling wasn't still ongoing, but to find that niche of commonality proved to be everything. Now, when we start talking about inclusion, again, tribes, I always push back, should not be collapsed into everyone else's. There's a difference between folks who are aboriginally from here and immigrants, right? When we start talking about relationship to land, our identity being inextricably tied to a particular place of the world, we can't go anywhere else. This is where we belong. And when you're removed from that, either forcibly or next to, that's, to me, no different than genocide. Can a Latino person say that? Can an Anglo person say that? Can a Black person say that? Not to the same degree as we would, I would just say that. And so because we talk about inclusion and we're not sensitive and respectful of those facts, then you're not going to have trust. You're not going to have commonality, and you're not going to have success. So I think, it's common ground, again, is that you can have it at a very effective level when you clearly demark how you differ, and you can respect those differences on both bases. So, I don't know if that answers your question. Anyone else? No more questions. I just want to tell you that I will never forget tonight. I was worried I was going to say the things that I said. Believe it or not, to me, this is part of my healing. Just to be able to speak in the ways in which I do. It helps me be a better father. Coming in here, he tried so hard to get his speech right, and he was in tears. Because he really wanted to do a good job, and I pushed him. And this whole process, leading up to tonight, makes I think each one of us stronger. It certainly makes me stronger. And it just exponentially grows from there. And I think in terms of being able to reach back into our own personal activity and then push forward with our own healing initiatives, that can transform ourselves, our families, our communities, and if you want to say the country. I think we saw a little bit yesterday what that could look like, hopefully. But I know for a fact it can be done because I'm doing it. So thank you so much for the